If you think I missed something, please comment below. I'm pretty sure after I finish making the video, I'll think of more stuff. But I believe these are some of the most important things or the main things that people need to pay attention to. And if you actually do these things, your Plecos will live a nice, long, and healthy, happy life. And that's the main goal, I think, for this channel, is to get people to keep their animals healthy and living for a very long time. And that's what I think why I make these videos, is to help you guys to minimize losses and to have more healthy fish for longer periods of time, and to enjoy them for extended periods of time, as well, to give the animals an extended long healthy life, which should be the goal for everybody, I believe. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Malik's Water Garden. In today's video, we're going to look at something that's really important to all of us. How are our zebra plecos dying? What are the reasons that they can die, and how can we prevent untimely death in our zebra pleco tanks? Now, I have not lost any fish or anything, praise God. The reason to make this video is because I really want to help other people to ensure that they don't lose fish. And these animals seem to be some of the easiest fish. They are some of the easiest fish in the hobby to keep and breed, but people seem to have the hardest time to keep them and take care of them. And a lot of people suffer deaths and losses really early in keeping them. That's when a lot of the losses seem to happen, is when you first get the fish, or within the first few months. So we're going to look at some of the reasons why this could happen, and how we can minimize these types of losses in our zebra pleco tank. Now, subscribe down below, hit that notification icon, and stay tuned, because a lot of these types of videos are coming out, and it really helps the channel out as well when you do subscribe, and it helps you out because you get updated when these type of videos get uploaded. We're going to talk about a lot of these hypancestral species that I'm keeping. I'm going to be doing care and maintenance videos on all of them, as well as breeding videos on every single species coming up. So as we get to 1,000 subscribers, you'll see a lot more of these types of videos coming up. So stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't, hit the notification icon, and let's get into this video. Why do our zebra plecos die untimely? Or why do people have such a hard time keeping these animals? And why are they considered hard when they are actually one of the most easiest fish? There are several different reasons why they can die untimely, and we're going to look at those reasons in terms of importance. So I'm going to say the most important thing is water quality, and I believe this is where a lot of people lose their fish initially, is because their tanks are not properly cycled, or their nitrogen cycle is not well established. Now, zebra plecos come from the Rio Xingu, where the water is really clean and pristine, and there's a lot of flow and current, and there's not a lot of stuff going on in that river except rocks and stuff. They live in the rock crevices and the sediment bed, and you know, through the rocks, cracks and stuff that naturally exist in the rockwork. So there's not really a lot of nature for them that they require, but they do require a lot of clean water. Now, when it says clean water, having a little bit of nitrates in your tank is completely normal, and that's not what seems to be affecting them the most. The most thing that seems to affect them is ammonia and nitrite spikes. Ammonia spikes are bad over long periods of time, and nitrite spikes can really kill your fish within a very short period of time. Now, ammonia spikes, I've actually not have witnessed this myself, because my tanks are quite established, and I actually do not put fish into an unestablished tank that's like several $1,000s worth. But a lot of people have sent me videos and pictures of their fish where the fish's skin is kind of pinkish, and I always tell them to check their water, and they always message me back, and most of the time they seem to tell me that their ammonia is spiking. Now, the ammonia spike seems to be something that happens either through source water issue. You might have ammonia in your source water, or you might put a little bit too much prime in there maybe, or something, I don't know. Whatever you might do that causes the ammonia spike is not good for your fish. It's usually a source water issue, or a issue with your cycle, if your tank is not well cycled, or if you take out a lot of the beneficial bacteria when you do a water change, either by washing the filters or something else, your fish tank could get periodic ammonia spikes, which seem to be really hard on the fish. How you can detect this is by doing a test. You should use a master test kit, but if you look at your fish's skin quality and you see pink skin, that is definitely a sign of an ammonia spike. So you don't want to have pink skin on your white zebra plecos. If you look at mine, they're always white and milky white. The skin is nice and bright white. So that's something to really always pay attention. And the next thing is, if the black is a little grayish and stuff, that's usually, these are all signs of distress. But in my experience, when the black is faded, that's usually when I've noticed this on fish that are going through shipping, when the nitrites are spiking. And if the nitrites are spiking, and the fish usually is drab colored and gray, they're not showing a lot of healthy signs. Now this could be a sign of shipping issues and stuff like that too when you just get new fish. But if they are in your tank and they've been in your tank for a few days and their black is not black dark jet black, if their black is grayish and it's faded and stuff, definitely check your water, because something is wrong. That fish is not supposed to look like that. There's no reason for this black and white fish to look gray, pink, or any other color. So always check to make sure something else is not going on in your tank, or the fish is not being picked on. So like, most important, I guess, thing is water quality. You definitely don't want your ammonia or nitrites to go up. You want to have the lowest amount of ammonia and nitrites as possible in an aquatic system. What do I mean by that? These animals are constantly producing ammonia. Every fish tank has ammonia in it. Very small amounts though. It's not detectable by our test kits. By the time you are able to detect these things with your test kits, you need to fix it, because that is not a good sign for these types of fish. So other types of fish can tolerate some of this stuff a little bit here and there. Like some fish are a little bit more hardy, but when it comes to zebra plecos and plecos in general, most types of hypancestrus, definitely no. So water quality is most important, and you have to maintain proper water quality, and you have to have well-established tanks to put your fish into. Now, having said that, nitrates don't seem to be too much of an issue in smaller amounts. So you can get away with having like 20, 30, 40 parts of nitrates. This tank had actually 50 parts of nitrates. I thought it was 55. I just did the math again, and I tested again this afternoon, and it's about 50 parts per million of nitrates. It's not there now. It's right now close to like less than 10 parts per million, and that's where I like to keep it. And if I can, and usually, and that seems to be really good for the fish, and they seem to really enjoy that. But the ammonia and nitrites, I really want to stress that you don't want to have any of those spiking, because your fish will die. The second most important thing, I think, the reason why your fish can die, or the reason why most people lose their fish, is improper diet. When we first got these fish into the hobby, people didn't know that they were carnivorous fish, and they were feeding them algae and algae wafers and kelp wafers and all that good jazz, and expected them to eat algae, and the fish died of starvation. So that's something to really pay attention to. Now we know that the animal is a carnivorous animal. They predominantly eat meaty foods. I feed mine a lot of different prepared foods, like tetratropical color granules seems to be very well accepted. A lot of the Ebo type foods, they seem to really enjoy Ebo hypancestrus specific foods. They also seem to enjoy Dr. Basilier's nano fish food, or biofish food, and they also really like Nutrifin bug bites Pleco formula, as well as Nutrifin bug bites color enhancing granules. They actually like the color enhancing granules a lot more than pretty much everything else. And then tetratropical color granule seems to be really crowd pleaser as well. All the Ebo foods as well. So a lot of meaty foods. I also feed them spirulina, which is about 60% protein. I feed them spirulina once a month, more or less, to get their guts flushed out. They do like to eat it, but not as much as the meaty food. So you can definitely tell that the animal is not a vegetarian or herbivorous fish. It's definitely a carnivore. And insect larvae type based foods seem to be readily accepted. I have not fed any of the Ripashi types of foods, but a lot of breeders feed them, and iguapo, and all that good stuff, and a lot of bottom scratcher seems to work well. And so yeah, any type of food that has a lot of meat content, and discus food seems to be very highly accepted. A lot of my discus food goes into this tank, and when they're closer to expiring, when I wanted to get them out of the way, I kind of feed it to all my hypancestrus, and they all love the discus food. So anything with beef heart and stuff like that, I don't recommend feeding that long term, and I don't recommend making that a staple diet, because it's definitely not healthy for these animals to be eating that type of food long term. You want to feed a predominantly marine based protein source, so like mussels, shrimp, fish meal, anything that has those types of food with some added other stuff like some spirulina and stuff is okay too. So improper diet seems to be reason number 2. Reason number 3, I believe, is environmental, and this is going to be a very diverse point, but like a lot of different times, temperature, let's say, is a big factor. You don't want to keep them too hot or too cold. You want to keep them between 78 degrees Fahrenheit and 84 degrees Fahrenheit, which seems to be about 26 degrees Celsius. to about 29 degrees Celsius. So anything above 29 degrees Celsius or 84 degrees Fahrenheit, your fish are not going to be happy or healthy. I've seen people keeping them at 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 32 degrees Celsius, and you are cooking your fish at that point. You do not want to keep your fish at that extreme temperature. Bring that temperature down below 84 degrees Fahrenheit or 29 degrees Celsius. Now, people think that when you jack up the temperature to about 32 degrees or whatever, that the fish will breed, but that is not the case. That's oftentimes what will happen is the fish will have internal organ failures at really high temperatures if you expose them to these type of temperatures long term. So you want to keep the temperatures below 29 degrees Celsius as much as possible. I mean, if the temperature goes up a little bit for a few days, a few weeks, the animals are not going to die at 30 degrees just because it's a degree higher than what I say it is, whatever. But long term, the bodies are not designed. They're not warm-blooded, they're cold-blooded animals, so they're dependent on the temperature of the water to maintain a stable body temperature, to maintain all their bodily functions. So you don't want to mess with the temperature too much. Also, you don't want to get them to be too cold. Anything below 74, 75 degrees, you're really pushing it. Even that is a little bit of an extreme, like for extended periods of time. If the temperature drops to 75 degrees for 2-3 days, it's not an issue. I've actually had zebra pleco fry growing out in a tank where the temperature dropped to 75 degrees over in the winter time for like 2 weeks, where I noticed it and I moved them out. They were all doing great. They didn't care one bit. They were eating. I didn't notice any difference. I didn't lose any of the fry. But my point is, you don't want to have that happen for extended periods of time, like months and months at end. You don't want to keep them at 75 degrees. You want to keep them above 78 degrees Fahrenheit for long-term health, because the animal does require that particular temperature range. You know, just like discus or any other animal, there's a range you can keep them at. You don't want to keep them below that range. You don't want to keep them above that range. And this essentially seems to be pretty similar to for most of the fish that comes from the Amazon River area, because the temperature seems to be pretty stable in most parts, at least in the lower parts of the Amazon. So having said that, temperature is a big factor. Another thing, environmental factor is a big environmental factor, I believe, is stress. So you don't want to have any environmental stresses on the animal. Some of the things that could cause stress are pecking order. If the animal is being picked on by other larger Pleco species in the tank, so you don't want to do them in a species, not a species only tank. So you don't want to do them in a group Pleco tank where you have like 10 different types of Plecos that are like different sizes and different food requirements and stuff. You don't want to do that. That really seems to stress them out most of the time. They can't hold their own when there's that many larger fish, especially when they're first introduced. They don't get fed properly. They don't. First of all, you're going to be feeding an improper diet based on the other fish's requirements, and then secondarily, the fish is not going to get a lot of food in that environment, so you're not going to have a healthy animal. It might sustain its life for a few months, a year, even hang in there. So people might say, "Oh, I have my Pleco in our group tank with the Adonis, and it's doing great." But again, the Adonis and the zebra Pleco have similar food requirements. They both require meaty foods. So that's another thing to consider. But an Adonis might snack on a zebra Pleco if he can get his mouth around it. So that's something to also consider. But you know, I'm just trying to make a point here. But my point is, like, yes, it might work in some people's one-off scenario. These animals are quite resourceful. They do nibble on mats of algae if there's nothing else for them to eat. They will eat green stuff. If I've starved them for 2 days, they will eat the spirulina. I've actually made them eat spirulina when I want them to eat spirulina. So they will eat algae when you want them to eat algae, okay? Or when you force them to eat it. But that doesn't mean it's healthy for the animal long term. So that's something to also consider. So when somebody says, "Oh, my animal does this, so it's always worked for me," you know, sure, whatever, pal. I'm just telling you what you need to do to keep this animals living for a very long time, not just for a few months or a few weeks or a few days or a year, you know. So the environmental stress is big. You definitely don't want to have them in a tank where there's larger animals, other fish, other Plecos, especially other cichlids that could outcompete them for food, and that they would not be getting enough food. They might get some food. You might see them eating 1-2 flakes, but they might not be getting enough proper food. So that's something to really pay attention to. And so doing a species only tank is definitely in your favor in that regard. And also another thing is they could be bullied by other fish in the tank, like other zebra Plecos, especially if your fish is not on the ground level, it's a problem. Plecos are usually ground dwelling animals. It's like a horse or a donkey or a zebra or like a ground dwelling animal. If this animal is now one point is sitting on a tree, something's wrong. That's why it's on the tree. There's no reason for them to leave the ground level and climb the glasses or anything like that unless there's something going on that the ground is not safe for them. So if the pleco is like always hiding on the back on the glass, or if you're always seeing him trying to move on the top of the corners and trying to get out of the tank and stuff, something's going on. You need to check and see either it's being predated on or being pushed and bullied by another fish. It's just being stressed. It needs to get out. So it's trying to find a way out of this box that you have it in, and it's essentially going to die if you don't move him out into another box. That's just the sad reality of that situation. And adding to that point, there's definitely how do you say it, aggression within the groups as well. Once a group is established, I don't seem to have too much issues. Like I have 17 adults in here and sub-adults, and they're all getting along completely fine. I've had them in the same tank more than a year now, and everybody's doing great. And there doesn't seem to be too much aggression in this group. They have figured out their pecking order. There seems to be 2 separate colonies in the group, and they seem to stay on their own side. So I'm gonna try to document that for you guys. But the females and the smaller fish definitely move back and forth. But there's definitely two males that are holding the 2 corners. There's one on that corner and there's one on this corner, and they don't come out into the caves. They're always hiding in the back, which seems to be weird. And I do have some larger females that are always hiding as well, but the smaller fish always come up to the front. They're always swimming about and I can always see them, and so it seems to be they've figured out their thing. But if you are adding new fish in, for example, if this is a setup and I just brought a new zebra pleco and I added it into the tank, it's definitely going to be picked on by the establishment here. So you don't want to kind of do that unless you just rearrange your decorations a little bit, do a large water change, move stuff around, so it's like a new environment to them, and then you put the new fish in. Don't just put a new fish into an established tank, especially without quarantine. Definitely want to quarantine. So watch my quarantine videos. If you haven't, there's a whole bunch of videos about quarantine and all that good jazz and why you should be quarantining your fish. Try to put links to that at the end as well. Aside from that, there's not really much more. These are some of the main important things. If you think I've missed something, please comment below and let me know. And let's try to elaborate on this in upcoming videos. Now, having said these things, they are one of the most easiest fish to keep and breed. So there is videos on my playlist about how to take care of zebra plecos. I highly recommend you check that out. And so the reasons these animals could die an untimely death: reason number 1, bad water quality, nitrates and ammonia spikes. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, improper diet. Reason number 3, environmental factors like temperature, improper temperature, and not having enough hiding places, environmental stress, predation, and pecking order and dominance and other stuff like that. So these are things to consider. As long as you combat these main things, your fish will live a very long and very successful life and will reproduce for you and produce so many babies. So we're going to look at how we can breed these plecos. So there's not much more I can add to that. I think if you think I missed something, please comment below. I'm pretty sure after I finish making the video I'll think of more stuff. But I believe these are some of the most important things or the main things that people need to pay attention to, and if you actually do these things, your plecos will live a nice long and healthy, happy life. And that's the main goal, I think, for this channel, is to get people to keep their animals healthy and living for a very long time. And that's what I think why I make these videos, is to help you guys to minimize losses and to have more healthy fish for longer periods of time, and to enjoy them for extended periods of time, as well to give the animals an extended long healthy life, which should be the goal for everybody, I believe. So as always, thank you so much for watching the video till the end. I'm getting new fish, so stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't. You're gonna see all those coming up, and thank you so much. I love you all. I'll see you on the next video. God bless.